He's been me for the past 4 years.
And this,
They gonna lock you up for life.
I don't care. I do not care. If I go to jail for the rest of my life, I do not care what happens to me because I love you. And you are man, you know that. You know that. And yeah, you bitch.
her baby's father, Raheem Grant, 7 times at an apartment in Riverdale. Grant captured the on his own cell phone, and you can hear him begging Harp to let him hold his baby just one more time before he.
And when it was finally time for somebody to stand up and speak for the woman who did it, the hardest words in that whole courtroom came from her own mother.
I know for a fact these plans did not include you. Envious nature took control, and you Raheem for moving on without you.
Harp could get life without parole.
That man went by Red Beasy, and his last few minutes are some of the heaviest footage attached to any case you will ever sit through. We are going all the way into his story, and we are doing so slowly because it deserves it. But before we get into Red Beasy's story, let's start with this story in San Antonio, Texas, with a man who did everything right and still did not make it out of his own front door. His name was Martell DeRouen. And if you only knew one fact about him before tonight, it was probably the wrong one to lead with. People love to whisper that he was a cousin of Beyoncé through her mother's Louisiana family. And that was true, but the man himself hated leaning on that. Friends and family said he barely mentioned it because he wanted to build his own name the hard way, brick by brick, off his own work. He rapped and produced under the name Cardone, and a sad truth is that his own story is bigger than any famous cousin ever could have made it.
16, king is the 16. It's like I got a lot of haters now because my wrist bling. Seems I got a lot of fakers now, they blowing big steam. My phone don't ring. Hey, what it do then? It took ching, tell me what you mean.
Martell DeRouen was born on June 18, 1986 in New Iberia, Louisiana, and he came up in a tight, blended Louisiana family where everybody stayed close. He graduated from New Iberia High School with the class of 2004, and instead of chasing music right out the gate, he did the responsible thing. He enlisted in the United States Air Force. This was not some kid playing tough for the internet. This was a man who served as a decorated sergeant in Air Force intelligence, a job that ran on security clearances and classified work, and he stocked up real hardware for it, including the Air Force Achievement Medal and a long list of other honors that most of us will never earn in a lifetime. He married his high school sweetheart, Joya LeJean Jenkins, back in 2007, and the two of them moved to San Antonio, making it home for years. The marriage ran about 14 years before they separated around 2019, and here is the part that tells you what kind of people they were. They split because he wanted to chase the music all the way, and she wanted to settle down and start a family. So they went their own ways, got their own apartments, and still stayed real friends.
We did live in separate apartments. It was just that. We weren't being intimate or anything like that. We were more so just friends.
Once he left the service, Martell poured everything into the music. He worked under the name Cardone, ran his own home studio, and slowly built a real local following in San Antonio. Early on, he ran with a New Iberia group called the Trill Young Gangsters before he ever went solo. So this was not some overnight hobby, it was years of grinding. His 2016 project, Trunk Bang, came out through Empire and pulled in features from names like Ray J and Paul Wall. And by 2019 and 20, he was putting out work through The Orchard, which sits under Sony. His single Magic was positioned as his big step toward a full project, and one of his music videos was even directed by a filmmaker who had co-directed the movie Machete. So the man had real doors starting to open. The people around him said his career was actually catching fire right when everything went dark. The folks who knew him best did not talk about the music first, though. They talked about how gentle he was. One studio owner who worked with him said messing with Martell felt like hurting a butterfly. And after you hear the rest of this, that line is going to sit heavy on your chest. Off the mic, he was the kind of dude who loved good food and used to go restaurant hopping just for the fun of it. A homebody at heart who kept his circle close and his family closer. His people remembered him as humble, quiet, and easy to be around, the exact opposite of the loud, flashy image the streets in his songs might make you expect. That gap between the man he actually was and the way he died is a big part of why this pace shook the people who knew him so hard. Somewhere around 2016 or 2017, Martell met a young aspiring artist named Sasha Skare after he messaged her on Instagram about appearing in one of his videos. She was around 17 at the time, and he was in his mid-20s. And for a good while, it was strictly work and friendship. She made flyers for his shows, helped around the studio, and was learning the game. It stayed professional for years. And by her own account in court, the two of them only became romantic and sexual about 6 months before he died. Hear her lay out the timeline in her own words on the stand.
How many years before January 2021 did you know Martell?
I would say we met in 2017, 2016.
How old were you back then?
17.
Sasha was chasing the same dream he was. She had been rapping and singing since around 2018, dropped a project called Higher Quality Volume 1 in 2019, and even sat down for an interview and performance on a web show called White Noise about a month before Martell was killed. By day, she worked freelance as a graphic designer and marketer, making logos and flyers for people, and Martell had produced a single for her. On paper, the two of them looked like a producer and an up-and-coming artist building something together. That is the version of her that most people around him saw. What almost nobody in Martell's world knew was that Sasha was already carrying something heavy from her past, and it was the kind of thing that changes how you read this entire story. Because more than a year before Martell was killed, Sasha was already tangled up in another deadly shooting up in Austin, and that case was still hanging over her head, wide open when she walked back into his life. Hold that fact right there because we are coming back to it, and it changes everything you think you know about what happened at that door. Because on January 22nd, 2021, Martell did the same normal thing he always did. He drove from San Antonio up to Austin, picked Sasha up from her mother's house, and brought her back to his one-bedroom unit at the Towers Apartments off La Cantera Parkway. They had shows lined up for that weekend and were supposed to be getting ready. She cooked dinner, they had some Hennessy, they smoked, they watched something on the couch. For a few hours, it was just a regular night between two people who made music together, and there was nothing about it that told you a man would be dead on that floor before the next morning. Then a phone rang and the whole night flipped. Sasha got a FaceTime call from a male photographer she said was helping set up one of her upcoming videos, and Martell caught wind of it and got heated. He came into the bedroom, flipped the lights on, and told her to leave. She asked why. In her telling, he was already convinced she had another man in her ear. Listen to how she described the exact spark, straight from the witness stand.
He was upset because he felt like I was on the phone with another man.
From that point, the two sides of this story split hard, and they never came back together. According to Sasha, the argument went physical fast. She said Martell tackled her onto the bed and started swinging and choking her until she felt herself blacking out, and that during that struggle, the bed frame actually broke apart under them. She said she clawed at his face, snapped off one of her acrylic nails in the process, and in a panic, grabbed his handgun off a nightstand just to get him off her. Hear her describe that fight the way she wanted the jury to picture it.
It felt like a long time. He was hitting me, choking me, until up to the point where I couldn't breathe. And then the bed just broke all of a sudden.
She said she backed out of that bedroom with the gun in her hand, telling him not to touch her, and started grabbing dishes out of the cabinets and throwing them on the floor to put space between them. Then she ran out the front door barefoot, taking nothing but her phone and his gun. Everything else she owned, her purse, her shoes, her art supplies, even her debit cards, all of it stayed behind in that apartment. That detail matters, because the reason she came back is the reason this became a murder case instead of a bad argument that ended with a slammed door. That is the setup, and it is the calm before the worst of it.
What happens in that hallway over the next few minutes is the part that puts Sasha Skare in prison for most of her natural life. And it starts with a single sound that one neighbor swore up and down was just fireworks from the theme park down the road. Because after Sasha left, Martell texted her, and those texts told the jury a completely different tale than the one about a woman running for her life. Detective Lawrence Sy summed the messages up as Martell saying he had to defend himself after she attacked him, that he had already gotten her out of the apartment, and that he wanted his gun brought back. One text put it plain, telling her to bring the gun back and come get her stuff. That is not the language of a man still swinging on somebody. That is a man behind a locked, bolted door thinking the danger already left the building. But the danger had not left. Sasha came back and she started banging on that deadbolted door, demanding to be let in for her belongings, with the gun still in her hand. Around 8:59 that night, a neighbor 1 floor down named Pedro Padilla was stepping onto the elevator when he heard a loud bang. Because of where he lived, right by Six Flags, his mind went straight to fireworks. Listen to him.
When I pressed the button, I heard a loud bang, and then shortly after, my elevator door opened, and because of where I live, I figured it was the Six Flags fireworks. I saw a young African-American female holding a gun, barefoot, walking down the hallway.
Right now, 9:22. It is a new week, and a new murder trial will begin tomorrow.
Sasha Skare is accused of the murder of an aspiring San Antonio rapper 2 years ago.
Erica Hernandez gives us a look back at this case that will be live streaming.
A murder case involving 2 aspiring musicians is heading to trial. The victim, Martell DeRouen, a San Antonio rapper who went by the name Cordone. The suspect, an aspiring singer. Sasha Skare will now be facing a judge and a jury in the 186th District Courtroom as they will decide if she is guilty or not guilty of murder. This is Open Court, the trial of Sasha Skare. A murder at an upscale apartment complex caught many by surprise in January 2021. 34-year-old Martell DeRouen was found to death, and the search was on for his. Here's a look back at the case and what led to the arrest of Sasha Skare. Police get a call asking if they can do a welfare check on Martell DeRouen at his apartment at the Towers complex in the 16,700 block of La Cantera Parkway. When they arrive, they find DeRouen from a gunshot wound. DeRouen was a known San Antonio rapper. He was even related to singing sensation Beyonce. The next day, police named 21-year-old Sasha Skare as a suspect. Skare, also an aspiring singer, was apparently dating DeRouen according to the arrest affidavit. Skare, at the time of the murder, already had a pending case in Travis County. She was on bond and charged with aggravated robbery after an apparent drug deal that ended in gunfire and left her boyfriend. After a 2-week search, Skare was found and arrested. According to the arrest affidavit, surveillance footage from the apartment complex put Skare at the scene. Moments after the she was seen walking along the hallway. Skare is now facing a first-degree felony charge. The trial begins on August 29th in the 186th District Court by presiding judge Cristina Escalona. If Skare is found guilty, she is facing 5 to 99 years or life in prison.
There was a second neighbor, too, a woman named Carolyn Eichmann, who lived directly across the hall, and her account is one of those little wrinkles that makes a real case feel real. She had a food delivery coming, so when she heard banging, she opened her door thinking it was her order, and she saw a barefoot woman in a long green dress pounding on Martell's door. But from her angle, the woman's hands looked empty, and she had earbuds in and never heard the shot, so she just closed her door and figured it was none of her business. 2 neighbors, 2 slightly different pictures of the same woman in the same green dress, and only one of them happened to have a camera pointed the right way. That camera is what turned a locked door full of questions into a murder the state could actually prove. That was not fireworks. That was one round fired through the front door, and the spot it went through is the whole case. The bullet hole sat just to the left of the door knocker, right by the peephole, at exactly the height of a man standing on the inside looking out to see who was making all that noise. Martell took that shot to the head and fell backwards, coming to rest just inside his own door. Hear the officer describe where that hole was.
Daniel Molina, badge number is 2467.
Daniel Molina, badge number is 2467. The bullet hole was slightly off left to the door knocker. I remember the victim fell backwards, I guess, while he was looking through the peephole.
Sasha's version was that she never knew he was behind that door at all. She said she was banging with the gun in her hand and it just went off, that all she wanted was to get his attention, nothing more. Listen to how she explained the actual shot and pay attention to how thin it sounds, even coming out of her own mouth.
How exactly was the gun discharged?
As I was knocking on the door, I just threw the gun up and just
Here's where it goes from tragic to cold. Instead of calling for help and telling the truth, Sasha walked off, borrowed a phone charger from a neighbor, and from a stairwell, she called 911, pretending to be Joya, Martell's estranged wife. She said she was locked out and thought her husband was hurt, and she mentioned the hole in the door, but she never once said she had fired a gun. On top of that, she got the basic facts wrong in a way that only somebody faking it could, giving the wrong name, the wrong age, a wrong address tied to her own old street. Play the call the jury heard.
San Antonio 911, this is Brooke. Do you need police, fire, or EMS?
I need police now.
To what address?
It's 16735 O'Connor Road, not O'Connor, Walking Terrace Parkway.
16735?
Yes.
Okay, is it a business?
It's an apartment complex.
What apartment number?
She's 1605.
Okay. 16735 Walking Terrace?
Yes.
Okay, this is the tower?
Yes.
Okay, and your name?
My name is Joya DeRouen.
Okay, what's going on?
I'm trying to get in my apartment, but I'm not able to get in. And I see, like, I'm just not able to get in. And I think my husband is injured.
Your husband's hurt?
Yes.
Do you hear him?
No, he's not responding, and I called him, and he's just not responding. And there's a hole in his door.
Officers actually came out that night, got no answer at the door, and left. So Martell lay on that floor while the days went by. It wasn't until January 26th, 4 days later, after his family couldn't reach him and knew he had a show he was excited about, that a welfare check finally sent police back. This time, they clocked the bullet hole near the pier hole, got maintenance to open the bolted door, and found him just inside in a pool of dried blood. That blood being dry told them he had been gone for days. The real wife, Joya, is the one who cracked it. When detectives played that 911 call, she said immediately that it wasn't her voice, it was Sasha's, and pointed out every wrong detail. Hear her call it out in court.
What information the defendant got incorrect, or what misinformation the defendant provided to 911?
Well, number one, she pronounced my name wrong. My last name is not DeRouen, it's DeRouen. She spelled it wrong. My first name, you couldn't tell whether she was going to spell it with a G or a J. It's with a J. And then Martell was not 28, he was 34. Just amongst a couple of other things that, were in the tape, it just was all over the place. It wasn't the correct information at all.
Then came the Ring doorbell footage, and that sealed it. The camera down the hall caught a barefoot young woman walking away right after that pop, a phone in one hand and a handgun in the other. Listen to the detective describe exactly what that video showed.
On the ring video, I saw the person later identified as the defendant walking in the hallway carrying a handgun and a phone. She had a phone in her left hand and a handgun in her right hand.
Inside the apartment, the crime scene backed up a struggle, but also backed up the state's version of how it ended. There was broken glass and dishes scattered across the kitchen floor, a busted bed frame with the headboard knocked loose, sheets twisted into a pile, and 2 unfinished glasses of Hennessy still sitting out from the night everything went wrong. Sasha's bag and shoes were still there, her debit cards and art supplies too, along with an empty gun box in the closet for the Smith & Wesson that had gone missing. And there was that broken acrylic nail on the bed that came back a DNA match to her. The bullet they pulled from Martell matched the caliber of his missing handgun, and Sasha later admitted she chucked that gun in a dumpster near the building, where police searched every bin around and never found it. Every piece of it lined up, and when the lead detective walked the jury through what he saw, he did not hesitate about what kind of case it was.
It was pretty obvious to us it was a homicide investigation. The bullet hole through the door where it was located and where his injury was located on his head told us that he had been shot through the door from somebody outside the door.
And this is exactly where that Austin case from her past comes screaming back, because it is the piece that turns her whole self-defense story sideways. Remember the shooting she was already charged in before she ever pulled that trigger on Martell. Back on November 29, 2019 in North Austin, Sasha and her then-boyfriend Andrew Bass set up a meeting they framed as buying weed, and police say it was really a robbery. It went bad. Bass was shot dead, another man was wounded, and Sasha got hit with aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon, a first-degree felony. In that Austin case, police said Andrew Bass shook the man's hand and then pulled a gun and told him not to move, before it turned into a shootout that left Bass dead and the other man wounded. Sasha first told officers she had just driven Bass there to buy weed and did not know the seller, but investigators say social media messages showed she actually knew the man and helped set the whole meeting up. She fled the Austin area, got tracked down in Converse, Texas by a fugitive task force in December of 2019 and bonded out in early 2020. That case was still open and unresolved when she walked back into Martell's apartment. So the woman telling a jury she froze in panic and a gun just went off in her hand was a woman who was already at that very moment facing a case tied to another man getting shot dead right in front of her. That context is brutal, and the jury got to sit with it. She had the chance to take a 20-year plea deal that would have had her out around age 43, and she turned it down, later saying she did not want to be away from her son that long, so she rolled the dice on trial. She took the stand as the only witness in her own defense, and under cross-examination, the prosecutor tore into the physical impossibilities in her story, including a claim about leaping over a kitchen counter that the state showed made no sense. By the end, she admitted the ugliest parts out loud. Listen to her own words about the lies she told and the state she says she was in.
You lied to a 911 operator, correct?
I lied about my identity, yes.
You didn't tell the operator that you shot through the door?
No, I didn't. I guess because at the time I just went mad. I just went insane.
The jury did not take long. In just over 2 hours, they came out and found Sasha Skare guilty of murder, and after a punishment phase full of Martell's grieving family, they handed down 55 years. Here, the moment it landed in the room.
We, the jury, find the defendant Sasha Skare guilty of the offense of murder as charged in the indictment. We assess her punishment at confinement for a term of 55 years.
Martell's sister, Cammie, faced her right after and did not hold a single word back. Listen to her.
Sasha, the pain and agony that you brought upon my family is unbearable. You deserve this. Your time is up. And the time has come for you to pay for what you've done. So fix your sheets, if you have any, because you've made your bed and now it's time to lay in it.
Sasha appealed and lost, with the court affirming the conviction and the 55 years on April 1, 2024.
Her one argument on appeal was that the prosecutor went too far in the punishment phase by asking the jury to weigh how much the victim's family would suffer in the future. But the court ruled her lawyers never objected to it at the time, so the point was waived. She's now serving her time in the Texas prison system, reported to be at the Christina Melton Crane Unit for Women in Gatesville, not eligible for parole until somewhere around 2048. A decorated veteran who beat the odds, wore the uniform, chased his dream, and stayed gentle through all of it. Gone at 34 behind his own front door over a phone call in a fight that should have ended with nothing worse than a slammed door. That's our first man. Our second man is the one we opened on, and his ending is even harder to sit with because he didn't just get killed on camera by accident. He filmed the beginning of it himself on purpose, hoping the recording would protect him. It didn't save his life, but it did make sure the truth could never be buried. This is Red Beezy.
Big diamond rings, big diamond chains on my neck. Boy, I stay like that. Don't fuck with lanes, don't fuck games, my nigga. We don't even play like that.
Hey, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening? Good Sunday, everybody. We alive, we breathing. If y'all looking at this post right now, guess what? Y'all blessed.
His real name was Raheem Grant, and the kid was a natural before most of us could even tie our shoes. Raheem was born on March 30th, 1989 in Fayetteville, Georgia, and by his own family's telling, he started banging on drums at 3.5 years old and was already performing on Showtime at the Apollo at the age of 7. Let that sink in, 7 years old on a national stage. As he grew, he moved from drums to rapping, then taught himself producing and engineering too, and by his 20s, he'd carved out a real spot in Atlanta's hip-hop scene under the name Red Beezy. His music leaned into the dangers of street life, which is its own kind of sad irony, because the streets aren't what got him. You want to know who Raheem was when the cameras were pointed at him by choice, back when everything was still ahead of him? Listen to him talk about his plans, hungry and lit up in an old studio interview.
Okay, man, so basically what we got going on right now for 2015, the new campaign, new project that I'm working on, Red Beezy, DTP, MOB, D4L, Shout It Low, you know what I'm saying?
That was the dream talking, and he chased it hard. Hear how bad he wanted it in his own words.
Get money, you already know it, man. I'm trying to get the richest I've never been in my life, you know what I'm saying?
He built that catalog mostly on his own 2 feet, teaching himself the boards and the engineering so he didn't have to wait on anybody. His music lived in singles and remixes rather than big albums, tracks like Oh Well going back to 2013 and remixes that put him next to names in the Atlanta scene, the kind of moves an artist makes when he's trying to build buzz one feature at a time. By 2017, it was finally paying off with a major deal in motion and a tour being planned, the exact moment when a career like his usually tips from local grind into something real. But the thing that reshaped his whole world wasn't a record deal, it was his daughter. Angel was born in November of 2014, and by every account his mother gave, the man became a completely different person the day that baby arrived, all in on being the best father he could be. In 2017, he had a major deal in motion and a tour being planned, and at the very same time, he was fighting for full custody of Angel. That fight for his daughter is the thread you have to hold, because it runs straight through the tragedy. The woman on the other side of it was Sierra Harp, also born in 1989, and her road to that apartment was rough long before Raheem was ever in the picture. Her own uncle later testified that she came up in a home full of physical, mental, and emotional abuse, and her ex described a teenager who carried a pocket knife, got into constant fights, and got expelled from school after stabbing somebody over a boy. In 2013, she came up to Raheem as a fan asking for an autograph and some work. He hired her to help promote his shows. That working thing turned romantic, and Angel came out of it in 2014.
The relationship fell apart though, and Raheem mostly kept contact for Angel's sake, while, according to his mother, Sierra's behavior got more and more erotic and jealous as his career climbed. His mama, Geraldine, saw enough of it that she gave her son a piece of advice that would end up outliving him. She told him if that woman ever got physical, record it, get the video, lay the phone down.
By December of 2017, Sierra had been evicted and was staying with Raheem temporarily, and that is the powder keg that blew up on the night of December 29th. That night, Sierra showed up at a neighbor's door around 10:50 in the evening, bleeding from stab wounds and carrying Angel, hysterical, with the blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit, saying Raheem had attacked her. She had a pistol on her when she got there, a small Ruger that was registered to a family member. Inside the apartment, police found Raheem face down and gone, shot 7 times, 2 in the back, 2 in each arm, and 1 in the head with a bloody push knife and his cell phone nearby. On the face of it, with her wounds and her story, it looked like it might be self-defense, and early on, investigators leaned that way. She told them Raheem had abused her for years, that on this night he came at her, that her knife fell out of an ankle holster in the struggle and he stabbed her with it, and that she fired blindly while blood was running into her eyes. When she was interviewed in early January, she stuck to the abuse story, but could not explain that head wound, and she could not explain a lot of the holes in her own account. The problem was that the more the investigators looked, the less her wounds matched her words. The autopsy showed Raheem was likely already down and finished when that final shot hit his head, which is not what a person fighting for their life does. So they had a story that sounded like self-defense and physical evidence that quietly said the opposite. What they needed was a way to see what actually happened in that room. And it turned out the answer had been sitting in an evidence bag the whole time, locked inside a dead man's phone. Then they got into the phone and the whole thing collapsed because Raheem had taken his mother's advice. In those final minutes, he pulled out his cell phone and started recording, and what he captured is why Sierra Harp will likely die in prison. The first video is Raheem himself, bloodied, holding up a knife and telling the camera exactly who did this to him, saying, "Y'all see this? This is what this bitch did to me," before the gunshots start. He was building his own evidence in real time, naming his killer while he still could. After those first shots, the phone changed hands, and this is the part that separates a panic from a murder. Sierra picked the phone up and kept filming, and over about 13 minutes, she stood over a wounded, dying man and taunted him. Raheem, shot and helpless on the floor, begged for water, and then he begged for the one thing that tells you everything about who he was. He asked to hold his daughter one last time. And Sierra's answer was to tell him he could crawl to her, followed by more shots. A father asked to hug his baby goodbye and got told to crawl. That is the footage. That is what the title of this whole thing comes from, and now you understand why it does not leave you.
He's been beating me for the past 4 years.
And this, they gonna lock you up for life.
I don't care. I do not care. If I go to jail for the rest of my life, I do not care what happens to me because I love you. And you abused me, you know that! You know that! And yeah, you mistreated me. Hey.
The video did something else too. Early on, it showed no stab wounds on Sierra at all, which lined up with investigators' belief that she shot him first and then cut herself afterward to build a fake self-defense story before she ran to that neighbor. The headshot fit the same read, coming while Raheem was already down and no threat to anybody. One detective who watched it put the horror of it into words that stuck with everybody who covered this case, saying he had seen a lot of evil, but never seen evil document itself like that. There were actually 4 separate videos on that phone, running about 13 minutes altogether, and they were not easy to get to. Police struggled to crack the locked device for weeks, and they only got in when Sierra herself handed over the passcode during a conversation about her medical release, probably never imagining what was waiting inside. Once they were in, the whole self-defense theory died on the spot. The clips even caught her filming herself at one point, crying out that she loved him and he did her wrong, the words of somebody building a story rather than somebody who just survived an ambush. Investigators came away believing she shot him, kept shooting as he lay there begging, and then stabbed her own legs to fake the wounds before running to the neighbor. Off the strength of those videos, Sierra was arrested on February 22, 2018. Her trial came in May of 2019, and that cell phone footage sat at the center of everything. The prosecutor called the video unforgettable, and it's not hard to see why. Her defense leaned on years of alleged abuse and battered woman syndrome and the fact that she was drunk, but the footage showed a jury the opposite of a woman fighting for her life. It showed patience and cruelty and time, 13 long minutes of it, all of it in front of a young one. In May 2019, the jury convicted her of malice murder and aggravated assault. The sentencing is where this case did something you almost never see. Her own mother took the stand against her. Adrienne asked the judge to hands down the maximum and even asked to have her daughter sterilized, calling her manipulative and dangerous. Watch how the local report framed a mother turning on her own child in open court.
Sierra Harp's own mother took the stand to urge the judge to give her the maximum sentence and also to sterilize her.
And this is where her mother spoke the line that opened this whole video, the one that cut straight to what the state believed the real motive was. Not fear, not survival, jealousy over a man who moved on without her. Hear it again now that you know the full weight of it.
I know for a fact these plans did not include you. Envious nature took control and you, Raheem, for moving on without you.
Harp could get life without parole. The judge delayed sentence.
To be fair to the full picture, not everybody in that courtroom was there to bury her. Her uncle got up and asked the judge for mercy, telling the court that Sierra herself had been sexually abused as a child and that the damage from it followed her the rest of her life. And some of her friends took the stand to say she was a good mother. Listen to how one report captured that side of the room.
A woman in Clayton County was sentenced today to 125 years in jail for her baby's father. Jennifer Bellamy joins us with more. Jennifer, it was a trial with a lot of emotion, some shocking testimony, pitting family member against each other.
It really has, Cheryl. Earlier this month, Sierra Harp's own mother took the stand to urge the judge to give her the maximum sentence and also to sterilize her. The mother upset that the murder took place in front of the couple's young daughter. Her testimony, a stark contrast to the people who took the stand today to speak in Harp's defense. Now, this story goes back to December of 2017 when Harp shot her baby's father, Raheem Grant, 7 times at an apartment in Riverdale. Grant captured the murder on his own cell phone, and you can hear him begging Harp to let him hold his baby just one more time before he... Harp said no. In court today, Harp's uncle took the stand to ask the judge for leniency. He said Sierra Harp was sexually abused as a child, and that impacted her for the rest of her life.
It's written somewhere to train up a child in the way that he should go, and as he gets older, he would never depart from it. That's not what happened here in this childhood.
Other friends of Harp took the stand to testify that she was a good mother, but Harp's own mother said the family tried to help her many times, yet she continued to make bad choices.
That is the harder truth this case never lets you off the hook about. A person can be both a real victim of a broken childhood and the person who did a monstrous thing, and both of those can sit in the same room at the same time. According to the reporting from that hearing, though, whatever sympathy the room might have held, Sierra did not do herself any favors. As her mother laid into her, she sat there sneering and mouthing curses back at the woman who raised her, which tells you plenty about the room. Geraldine spoke too, breaking down over the video and over the obsession she believed had swallowed her son's life. The sentencing had actually been pushed back once already because one of Sierra's own attorneys withdrew from the case, dragging out an ending that the family just wanted to reach. The court did not spare her. Sierra Harp was sentenced to 125 years in prison, which at her age is the rest of her life, and she stood there asking forgiveness while still saying it never would have happened if she had been sober. You would think that would be the end of it, but this case refuses to stay simple, and here is the twist that has the family at war with itself to this day. In February of 2025, Raheem's own sister, Lavoya Williams, testified in support of Sierra getting a brand new trial, saying that while Sierra did wrong, her brother had put Sierra through a lot of mental abuse, and telling the court plainly that she did not want Sierra convicted. Her new lawyers argued the first trial was botched, that the original defense never prepared her sister to testify about that abuse. But Raheem's mother is not having any of it. Geraldine flat out denies her son ever abused anybody, and she believes her daughter is lying out of jealousy over who is raising Angel, saying that if you murder someone and plot it and do it, you should stay in jail for the rest of your life. One family, one dead son, and two women who loved him standing on opposite sides of the woman who killed him. Through it all, Geraldine has been the one carrying the weight and the memory, the mother who once told her son to record his fights and then had to live knowing that advice is the only reason the world ever learned the truth. She has spoken about the pain of that footage and about Sierra's obsession with her boy, and she is the one raising Angel now. That is what gets lost when a case like this becomes content. That is our second man. Two men now, both in music, both killed up close by a woman who was supposed to love them, both of it caught on a camera that ended up telling the truth they could not tell themselves. Our third man breaks the pattern in one painful way. There is no confession, no verdict, no name for who did it. There's just a body, a grieving girlfriend on a 911 call, and a story that grew way bigger online than anything the police have ever been able to prove. This one is a mystery, and honesty about what we do and do not know is the only fair way to tell it.
And the investigation is taking place at a gated community, which you see behind me, which is called The Cottages. Now, it has been very quiet since we arrived here.
His name was Joshua Williams. He was born on June 23, 1990, a black man of 35, and he was killed just after midnight on April 3, 2026, in northwest Austin, Texas. Here is what the official record actually says, cleanly, before we get anywhere near the rumors. In the early hours of that Friday, multiple neighbors in the 10,900 block of Brazoria Lane near a gated complex called The Cottages at Northwoods called to report gunshots. One of those callers was Joshua's girlfriend, who said her boyfriend had been shot. Officers rolled in around 1:42 in the morning and found Joshua outside a home with obvious gunshot wounds. The injuries were so severe that no life-saving measures were even attempted, and he was pronounced dead at the scene at 1:09 that morning. Austin police called it an isolated incident with no ongoing threat to the public, said they didn't know whether Joshua and the shooter knew each other, and put out no suspect description at all. It went into the books as Austin's 18th homicide of 2026, case number 26-0930050.
In northwest Austin. This happened early this morning on Brazoria Lane near Lakeline Boulevard and 183. And that's where we find KVU's Michael Courier, who joins us now with the latest. What can you tell us? And good morning, Michael.
Brian, Yvonne, good morning. Yeah, this is the 18th homicide investigation that is taking place according to police. And the investigation is taking place at a gated community, which you see behind me, which is called The Cottages. Now, it has been very quiet since we arrived here. We have seen within the past 5 minutes about 3 more police vehicles make their way through that gated community. As around 12:43 a.m., according to Austin police, they say there were multiple calls to 911 of people hearing shots. Police arrived to this neighborhood at around 1:09 a.m., finding what they say was a 35-year-old man. Now, they do say that nobody is in custody and there is no known suspect at this time. Police believe this is an isolated incident with no threat to the community. Now, at this point in the investigation, police are still contacting and speaking with neighbors that are there in this gated community at the cottages. They are also really searching the area, canvassing the area, making sure that they didn't miss anything. And Austin police are also saying if there is anyone out there that may have any information to this homicide.
That's nearly the whole confirmed story, and I want to be straight with you about that, because from here, the internet took over. Detectives did what detectives do in a case with no witnesses willing to talk. They asked every neighbor to check home security and doorbell cameras from 11:30 the night of April 2nd through 1 in the morning on April 3rd, noting the shooter may have driven right through that quiet neighborhood on the way out. They even set up an online portal where people could upload any photo or video they had. Capital Area Crime Stoppers put up a reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to an arrest, tips anonymous.
His death fell under the county medical examiner as a violent, sudden death, but no autopsy details beyond apparent gunshot wounds were ever released to the public. Weeks later, on April 25th, his funeral was held at St. James Baptist Church on East Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, a church that stood in the heart of historic Black Austin since 2027. The memorial page put up for him didn't even carry a full obituary, just a short run of guestbook messages from people leaving prayers and memories, a few of them mentioning his parents, and one asking somebody to go give a woman named Sarah a hug. That is what a real grieving community looks like in a case with no answers. And then, quiet. Months went by with no arrest, no named suspect, no motive released, while Austin's homicide count for the year kept climbing well past the number his case was filed under. As of the last public reporting, the killing of Joshua Williams is still unsolved. There is one more thread the online tellings lean on hard, and it's worth handling with the same care because a piece of it is real. Those videos claim that back in 2021, a shooting that killed one of Joshua's friends was actually an attempt aimed at Joshua that missed. The real event underneath that claim did happen. On September 20th, 2021, a 27-year-old man named Jarrell Davidson was shot and killed in the 4700 block of Bandera Road in East Austin. Callers that night described people yelling before the shots and a woman screaming after, and officers found Davidson lying in the road with multiple gunshot wounds. The medical examiner ruled it a homicide. A man named Ronald Charles turned himself in a few days later and was charged with first-degree murder in that case, with his bond set at $300,000. There was even a strange footnote. A car found burning nearby that same night that the fire department ruled arson, though nobody ever publicly tied it to the shooting. That's a documented separate homicide with its own suspect and its own victim. And from the available reporting, it doesn't look like it ever reached a clear public resolution either. But the link to Joshua, the idea that this was really a bullet meant for him, exists nowhere in the official record. No police report, no news story, no court file names Joshua as present, as a target, or as connected to Davidson's death in any way. It lives only in the same online storytelling that built the rest of the legend. I bring it up not to feed the theory, but to show you exactly how these stories get stitched together, taking one true tragedy and welding it onto another to make a pattern that the evidence never actually drew. Joshua deserves better than to be turned into a myth, and so does Jarrell Davidson, whose own killing is real and still deserves its own justice. So what are we really left with on this third man? A 35-year-old shot dead outside a home in the dark, a girlfriend screaming into a phone that her man had been hit, a neighborhood full of doorbell cameras that police are still hoping hold the one frame that cracks it, and a family that had to bury him with far more questions than answers. If you strip away every unverified rumor, that bare truth is somehow even heavier because it's the kind of ending a lot of Black families in this country know too well. A man gets killed, the case gets a number, the number gets buried under the next number, and unless somebody with a doorbell camera or a guilty conscience finally comes forward, the file just stays open. The reward is still technically out there. The tip lines still work, and Crime Stoppers will still take an anonymous call from anybody who saw something that night. But the honest read, months down the line, is that Joshua's people are still waiting on the one piece of footage or the one phone call that might finally give them a name. The camera that solved the first two cases is the exact thing police are still begging the public to check for the third, and so far it hasn't been enough. Limey's three men up and the pattern finishes itself. Martell DeRouen, a decorated veteran who served his country and stayed gentle through all of it, shot through his own door by a woman who was already tied to another man's death when she pulled the trigger. Raheem Grant, a father who begged to hold his baby one last time, filmed the start of his own murder trying to protect himself and was told to crawl by the mother of his child. Joshua Williams, killed in the dark outside a home in a case that nobody has closed, his real story nearly swallowed whole by a louder fake one built for clicks. 3 different cities, 3 different endings, one guilty and gone forever, one guilty and fighting for a new trial, and one still walking free tonight. but the same brutal lesson runs under all three.
The thing to take from all of this is simple, and it is not about being scared of the world. It is about paying attention to who is actually in the room with you, because the person closest to you can carry the most damage, and love does not make anybody bulletproof. Record it if you have to, like Raheem did, and get out early if you can. But most of all, take the warning signs seriously the first time you see them, not the last. Rest in peace to all three of them. If somebody you know is stuck in a relationship where the fights are turning physical or the jealousy is turning scary, do not let it ride. Share this with them, because one honest conversation today could be the thing that keeps their name from ever ending up in a story like this one.